is Nuffsmuck 200 reviewing every episode of Season 1 of Spongebob Squarepants. So, how I made each episode. I watched every episode of each season and took notes along the way. And I put it all onto slides in inspiration, and then I took a screenshot of each image and then put it on iMovie. Also, people think that the show SpongeBob should be canceled. Why? Because most of the new episodes aren't so funny, and they are jokes, just like the post-movie episodes. The first 3 seasons were great. Seasons 4 and 5 were split, and season 6 onwards are all bad. But my ratings won't actually match each season, so I should watch every single one, including the first 3 seasons. People thought the show was going to get better after the second movie, but I haven't seen those episodes, and I think after the movie, those episodes are going to be bad. Take a look at the first episode. On the top, we have the episode name with the production number. Under that, we have a brief synopsis of the episode. To the left of that is a fun fact from the episode. Underneath is a highlight, which is my favorite part of the episode. To the right, we have the air date and the order it aired on broadcast Nickelodeon. And then underneath that, we've got a quote from the episode. There will also be some Easter eggs on slides. If you see a leg with L is for leg written, that means it's an episode with the "my leg" gag on the episode. And also, when you see a clock in the screen, that represents an episode with a time card. Now here's how I'm going to rate the episodes. I will rate the episodes from 0 to 10. 0 being the worst, and 10 being the best. Now let's get into our review. Episode 1A, Help Wanted. SpongeBob gets a job at the Krusty Krab. Fun fact, this episode wasn't included on the Season 1 DVD for some reason. Yeah, there were some copyright issues with Tiny Tim's song. My favorite part of it is Loving in the Soonlight, Loving in the Moonlight, which is sung by Tiny Tim, who passed away sometime before this episode aired. Yeah, this is a classic episode. I'm gonna give it a 9. I like how SpongeBob is making Krabby Patties. It's a classic. Yeah, and Squidward writing his face in the word loser and then spraying it on the Krusty Krab door, which is kind of pretty funny. And the part where SpongeBob trips over a nail and bounces around the Krusty Krab. It's a classic. Everyone remembers it. It was even on the Ultimate SpongeBob Sponge Bash. Episode 1B, Reef Blower. SpongeBob attempts to move a shell off of his lawn. Fun fact, this episode doesn't have any voices at all. However, there were rumors online that the day the writers came in to work on the sound equipment broke and the whole episode was written silent. But however, at one point, the word "you" is shown in closed captions with no audio. Anyway, my favorite part of the episode is the shell landing on Squidward. This episode is silent, but it's not enough for me to give it a 10. What should I rate this episode? I'm gonna give this episode a 7. Yeah, this episode is actually the shortest episode. It's only 3 minutes because the episode Help Wanted is 8 minutes long. And also, I like the part where SpongeBob sucks all the water of the ocean and then Squidward can't breathe. And then at the end, the shell lands on Squidward, which is my favorite part, and then the episode ends there. Episode 1C, Tea at the Tree Dome. SpongeBob meets Sandy Cheeks. Fun fact, this is, of course, Sandy's first appearance. My favorite part of the episode is I need it, which is very popular, and it has become a very popular internet meme on YouTube. I like this episode. Like the when in doubt, pinky out lines. Very memorable. And SpongeBob's dried out freak out, and SpongeBob's sentence saying that air isn't good. Very funny. I'm gonna go give this episode an 8. Yeah, there isn't enough for me to give this episode higher. I wanted to give this episode a 10, but there isn't just enough good material for me to do that. There are some more really great episodes this season. Episode 2A, Bubble Stand. SpongeBob starts a bubble stand. Fun fact, SpongeBob's Bring It Around Town is featured on the Delivery Dilemma game at nick.com. My favorite part of the episode is the bubble blowing technique. We need to have a talk about this episode. SpongeBob says, now it's time to bring it around town during his bubble blowing technique. And this episode officially started the Nickelodeon premiere of Spongebob Squarepants on July 17th, 1999, when the pilot episode aired on July 24th, 1999. Also, another funny part of the episode is when SpongeBob with two hands is blowing a bubble that looks like an elephant, and then Patrick is like, it's a giraffe, which goes into Squidward's house, and then it destroys into bubbles. So, I'm gonna give this episode a 9 for its comedy, and its jokes, and its storytelling. Yeah, and who wants to pay 25 cents to blow a bubble? Episode 2B, Ripped Pants. SpongeBob rips his pants, causing everyone to laugh. Fun fact, this is the first appearance of Larry and the fish character Scooter. My favorite part is the Ripped Pants song. This episode was really great. I even like the part where SpongeBob rips his pants so many times they get a kick out of it, but that changes. The first few times it's funny, and the second after many times it starts to get annoying. They find annoying, but when SpongeBob says that he needed a tailor, then everyone starts to walk away, and then Sandy gets annoyed. But when he does the thing where he rips his pants off, no one listens. But then he thinks he's the biggest loser on the beach. Well, someone forgot to put on sunscreen, and then another person got sand in their bun. And the musical number, the Rip Pants song, was amazing. So, I'm going to give this episode a 10 out of 10. There's also a scene where SpongeBob says that he pretends to drown when he actually doesn't. Also, he makes a joke about a banana split because he didn't already have one, and SpongeBob split his pants, but the person at the ice cream stand didn't find it funny. That's all I have to say about this episode. Episode 3A, Jellyfishing. SpongeBob and Patrick take Squidward jellyfishing. Fun fact, Patrick says, Merry Christmas, even though he shouldn't have known about it yet. Yeah, Sandy brings Christmas to Bikini Bottom in a later episode of the series. Anyway, my favorite part is Squidward on his bike, which is very funny. The jellyfish, Squidward swallowing the jellyfish and going down into his shirt, and then he loses control on the bicycle, which causes him to fall off a cliff and then be put in a wheelchair throughout the episode. I also like the joke, look at that quote right there. Firmly grasp it. Patrick says that when he's trying to put the jellyfish net in Squidward's hand. I'm gonna give this episode, because I really like this episode a lot, a 10 out of 10. Also, when SpongeBob and Patrick are jellyfishing, the Blue Daniel plays when they're jellyfishing, and SpongeBob and Patrick sing along. Episode 3B, Plankton. Plankton uses mind control to obtain the Krabby Patty formula. Fun fact, this is, of course, the first appearance of Sheldon Plankton. Yeah, for some reason, Plankton is tinier in this episode than in the rest of the series. Anyway, my favorite part of the episode is Plankton's record player. I like this episode, so I'm going to give this episode a 9. Yeah, when Plankton uses the record player, he puts on the dramatic music, but when he tries to go into his brain, he plays the alphabet song. But then he realizes it's the wrong thing, so he puts on the other music. There are a lot of jokes in this episode, like when Plankton uses the machine Karen, he puts in seaweed, and Plankton is inside Karen, and SpongeBob takes the Krabby Patty home. Also, Plankton joking that it's his birthday, and his golden spatula, and SpongeBob thinks he wants to be friends so he can get his hands on a Krabby Patty, but later in the series, he might get his hands on a Krabby Patty. I don't know for sure, maybe in another Plankton episode. In fact, the Krabby Patty formula isn't even mentioned in this episode. Episode 4A, Naughty Nautical Neighbors. SpongeBob destroys SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship. Fun fact, Squidward said he was playing Solitude in E minor, but he was actually playing in F minor. My favorite part of this episode is when Squidward is choking on the fork, and then Patrick laughs at him. This episode is another classic. It contains SpongeBob and Patrick being really funny, blowing bubbles, where Squidward is trying to cook, but Squidward can't cook because SpongeBob and Patrick are being annoying, and when Squidward is playing Solitude in E minor, Patrick falls asleep. Also, at the end, SpongeBob and Patrick come over for a dinner party with soda, and they drink all the soda, which destroys Squidward's house, and the "oh my back" quote from the episode. I love this episode. I'm gonna give it a 10. Episode 4B, Boating School. Patrick attempts to help SpongeBob pass his driving exam. Fun fact, this is the first episode with the "my leg" gag and Mrs. Puff. My favorite part is the SpongeBob cheating. This episode is another classic, and it has really good gags, like the act natural gag, and the lucky undergarments, and SpongeBob cheating. What should I rate this episode? I had a hard time whether to rate this episode an 8 or a 9. I'm gonna give this episode a 9. If this bothers you, then that's too bad. This episode was actually aired during the Biggest Exploding Butters Marathon on November 17th, 2012. And the episode was wasn't paired up with Naughty Nautical Neighbors. It was paired up with a season 3 episode. Now it's time for 5A, Pizza Delivery. SpongeBob and Squidward deliver a pizza. Fun fact, this episode was voted number 1 on the Ultimate SpongeBob Sponge Bash. My favorite part of pizza delivery is the pizza jingle. This episode is going to get 10 out of 10. This is an amazing episode. Yeah, Pie Guy Rules said that this was his number 1 on his top 5 for season 1, and it was also voted number 1 in the Sponge Bash. I also liked the part where Squidward was chasing SpongeBob to give him the pizza, but then he claimed it was for the customers. It's a really great plot with a really great music number, and the jokes are not dragged out for too long. Very enjoyable episode. Next is 5B, Home Sweet Pineapple. SpongeBob's home is destroyed by nematodes. Fun fact, this is the first appearance of Spongebob Squarepants and the nematodes. My favorite part is the scene where Patrick is hitting SpongeBob with his home rock and yelling out, "Spiders! spiders, spiders. But SpongeBob is actually a sponge. He's just saying that because he thinks he's a spider. There aren't a lot of things in this episode that I really enjoy. Yeah, the nematodes drinking SpongeBob's house is weird. In real life, you can't drink a house. So I'm gonna give this episode a 7. But I also like when SpongeBob's house is getting shrunk and he says, "Hooray, Gary! We're finally huge!" And another and a lot of building the house gags. It's still an enjoyable episode, but it's light on Joe. Episode 6A, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 1. SpongeBob and Patrick learn that the heroes have retired. Fun fact, Man Ray is mentioned, but he doesn't appear in this episode. Pie Guy said that for his fun fact, it was the first appearance of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, which really wasn't that fun. Anyways, my favorite part is the Raging Whirlpool. Who loves this episode? What about me? Maybe 8. I can't find enough good jokes to give it a 9 or 10. Well, it's still an enjoyable episode. But when SpongeBob and Patrick are pretending that they're married and then they get kicked out, that is kind of funny. And that's it for this episode. Number 6B, Pickles. SpongeBob loses his confidence after he forgets the pickles on a Krabby Patty. Fun fact, this is the very first appearance of Bubble Bass. My favorite part is when SpongeBob is trying to go to sleep. Yet SpongeBob freaks out when he forgets how to make a Krabby Patty. He can't remember the order. But when in Help Wanted, he remembered. But now, how can he not remember? He's made Krabby Patties in the past. Maybe it's just a whole pickle thing that's getting him messed up. He doesn't know where to put the pickles. Yeah, I don't like pickles. Whenever I order grilled cheese, they give me a pickle, and I remove the pickle. But this episode, it's a cartoon, but I'm gonna give it an 8. Yeah, Bubble Bass likes pickles. And then at the end, they're like, "Hip hip boo! Hip hip boo! You stink!" Still a very enjoyable episode with some good jokes and good comedy. Episode 7A, Hall Monitor. SpongeBob becomes Hall Monitor, which results in chaos. Fun fact, this is the first time we see Mrs. Puff in jail. My favorite part of the episode is when they're using the walkie-talkies. This is also the second episode to feature the "my leg" gag, as you can see by this little L is for leg in the corner. Mrs. Puff chooses who's going to be Hall Monitor. He goes through everyone, but they all did Hall Monitor, and the only one who haven't done it was Spongebob Squarepants. There's a lot of funny stuff in this episode. Because of this, I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. And it's also funny how Mrs. Puff is teaching a class on television, which doesn't really happen in real life, but Mrs. Puff is in jail, so he had to do it. It's a very cool episode with very large amount of jokes, and it's enjoyable. Episode 7B, Jellyfish Jam. SpongeBob brings home a jellyfish, which causes chaos, just like in the previous episode. Fun fact, for some reason, I don't know why, the title card was cut in recent showings. Yes, starting in 2012, they would just begin with the opening credits, start the episode without the title card for whatever reason, but in sometime in July 2014, it was shown again on an unknown date. Anyways, now my favorite part is the SpongeBob dancing with the jellyfish, which is very cool. Also like the ending with this whole song of SpongeBob getting the jellyfish out of his house, and then Squidward is taking a bath with jellyfish things. It's a funny episode. And I also like that quote right there. SpongeBob's the only guy I know who could have fun with a jellyfish for 12 hours. Yeah, I'm going to give this episode a 10 out of 10 because it's really funny and it's a really great plot. I love it. And also, one thing that I noticed about this episode is that SpongeBob's home gets destroyed in this episode. Second, just like in Home Sweet Pineapple, but that time it was nematodes, but this time the jellyfish jelly destroy it. Episode 8A, Sandy's Rocket. SpongeBob and Patrick sneak onto Sandy's rocket ship. Fun fact, there is actually a chapter book based on this episode. My favorite part is the toothpaste and peanut butter gab. Yeah, there aren't a lot of stuff that I like. It's just SpongeBob and Patrick spraying aliens with the alien moon rock shooting. Yeah, especially they do it to everyone in Bikini Bottom, and then they all get annoyed with SpongeBob and Patrick, and they get stuck on space. I don't really like this episode that much, so it's gonna get a 6. Yeah, I wasn't really wild about this episode. There are some things that are wrong with this episode, like the scene where they go into space and then they leave Sandy, and they're pretending to play a video game, and then the ship crashes on the moon, and then they're in space, and that part is really annoying. Episode 8B, Squeaky Boots. SpongeBob buys boots from Mr. Krabs, which causes an annoying squeaking sound. Fun fact, this is Pearl's first appearance. He appears in later episodes, but this is his first. My favorite part of the episode is Mr. Krabs trying to close the window, but it keeps opening, and then he loses his legs by stepping in holes. That is the only thing part of this episode that actually made me laugh. The rest of the episode is nothing but the squeaking of the boots and Mr. Krabs trying to get rid of them. Nothing but squeaking. So, this episode is going to get a 3 out of 10. This episode's plot is kind of stupid, which I didn't think there would be a plot like this in season 1, but, well, you know what? There was a bad episode in the first season, and hopefully it will be the only bad episode in this season. Yeah, the first 3 seasons are the best, but this one didn't have enough good jokes. It was just squeaking and annoying squeaking throughout. Except for that little scene when Pearl is wearing her flipper slippers, which she got for her birthday, but then Pearl starts crying. And I really don't like it when Pearl cries. Anyway, let's move on. Episode 9A, Nature Pants. SpongeBob gives us a modern life to live with the jellyfish. Fun fact, Squidward mentions 11 minutes, which is the average length of a SpongeBob episode, except for Help Wanted and Reef Blower. Help Wanted being 8 minutes, and Reef Blower was only 3 minutes. Anyways, my favorite part is Patrick trying to catch SpongeBob. I don't really have much to say about this episode. I like the episode. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Yeah, also, SpongeBob. There's a scene where SpongeBob, in the dark, is walking all alone, screaming, when he's trying to be a jellyfish, and then he rubs himself all over, and then he passes Sandy's house, but he didn't really make a mistake. He was trying to live with the jellyfish, and then he realized it was a mistake when it actually wasn't. Episode 9B, Opposite Day. Squidward tells SpongeBob and Patrick that it's opposite day. Fun fact, this is the first episode where Squidward tries to move out. My favorite part is SpongeBob and Patrick being Squidward. I have a lot of things to say about this episode. First, the birthday thing. SpongeBob and Patrick wake up Squidward, telling them that it's his birthday, but it's not his birthday. Squidward then kicks him out of the house, then he tells him to do the opposite, And when the woman walks into Squidward's house, he finds out there are 3 Squidwards, and then he leaves because Squidward wants the woman to sell his house, and then he goes back home. Yeah, there are a lot of gags, a lot of funny gags. There's also a reverse quote in this episode. It's like, to the opposite side, I give up. And SpongeBob pretending to be Gary, and then he says, meow. This episode is going to get a 10 out of 10. This is another classic with some really good gags, a really good plot, and a lot of SpongeBob and Patrick being funny and doing the opposite. Now it's time for episode 10A, Culture Shock. Squidward hosts a talent show at the Krusty Krab. Fun fact, this episode aired on Dan Pomivar's 36th birthday. I don't know who he is. My favorite part, poetry by Gary. And guess what? The quote that Sandy says that is right there happens during that scene. And this episode, another good part, SpongeBob is pretending to do tap dancing with a bubble. There are some good jokes, but it isn't enough for me to give it a 10. What should I rate this? Let's give this episode a 9. Yeah, Squidward's dancing scene was a bit creepy, but the rest of the episode is really good. And in fact, the encore with SpongeBob and Squidward switching places was also pretty funny. And Gary talking and saying meow and that everyone throwing ketchup at Squidward during his performance, which is a little bit funny. Other than that, it builds up. The episode has good comedy, and it builds up to a really good episode. Episode 10B, Fun. SpongeBob befriends Plankton because he thinks he is lonely. Fun fact, the Fun song is featured on the Nick Karaoke CD, and also it was number 2 on the Ultimate SpongeBob Sponge Bash. My favorite part, obviously, the Fun song. In fact, the Fun song was the musical number, and whenever there's a musical number, it's most likely going to be my favorite part of the episode. And also, when they pretend to go jellyfishing, that second verse, F is for fire, he reenacts that when he's pretending to be a winner. It's not about winning, it's about fun, right, kids? Wrong. That's in SpongeBob. Because of this, there's a lot of good stuff. I'm gonna give this a 9. Also, beginning when the alarms go off at the Krusty Krab, Plankton disguises himself. You probably think he's just the Plankton. He disguises himself as in a magic shop with a face Krabby Patty. This is another classic episode with that really good song, musical number, and good animation, and great comedy, and a lot of good jokes, especially when they're going jellyfishing together.